Welcome back to Ctrl Alt Lead, the podcast from computing where we talk to IT leaders about what's moving in the market. This week I'm talking to AWS CISO Chris Betz, so perhaps I'll hand over to Chris for the very first question. Chris, can you introduce yourself to our audience?
And it's great to talk to you, Tom. Thank you for having me today. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for AWS, and in that role I'm responsible for AWS security globally, which is, I'll tell you, an exciting, challenging, and just a lot of fun as technology just continues to advance really, really fast.
Absolutely. Obviously one of those technologies that's evolving very, very quickly right now is artificial intelligence. So perhaps to kick off, I'd love to know your thoughts on the biggest blind spots security leaders like yourself need to address when it comes to AI agents, this latest evolution in AI tech.
We've spent 25 years, I think, actually. I was talking to a friend the other day, working with machine learning and AI at AWS. And as you say, it is evolving fast. AI agents are really exciting. I think there is a ton of potential that we're already seeing emerge as agents take on work that helps make people more efficient than they ever were before. But as you say, agents acting on a person's behalf are a little bit different than how we've used AI in the past. And so I can share some of the learnings that we've certainly hit as we're building things. First one, I'm just going to give you 5. Number 1 is around authentication and authorization. An agent is working on behalf of a human. That means you have to give it the access that the human's intending for it to have in order to do that work. Well, that's great. You don't want to send that access, though, in the prompt to the foundational model. What's really important is making sure that you've got a separate channel for passing those credentials along so that you're not providing those to the foundational model that you want to go say, hey, do this work. Instead, you're providing those credentials out of band. So that's lesson number 1. Always provide credentials out of band and authorization out of band for the agents. Second thing is it's when an agent comes back, one of the things that we learn when we're developing software is to treat anything that comes from a human being very, very carefully. In fact, as engineers, we call it untrusted input, because you never know whether it's going to be a typo or something else, what somebody accidentally or on purpose is going to hand back to a system. You have to treat an agent the same way. The foundational model and the work it does needs to be treated just like a human's input. It's untrusted input, and you need to treat it just like a human with the same skepticism, the same quality programming, because the same kinds of errors can happen. Foundational models learn from people. They were trained on people, and so therefore they can do the same kinds of mistakes. A third set of things that we've learned is to isolate the code execution environments. One of the things that we've done internally is when we're going to have an AI agent do work, we actually generate the code and actually run it in a sandbox before we go and run it live to make sure that it's having the effect that we intend. Recommend that all the CISOs do the same thing. Think very carefully about how you use the code that's generated and make sure that you've got the right quality bars. Again, AI agents are doing those things that help make us faster and more effective. They've learned from people how to do things, and that means they can do some of the same errors. And so having those that same methodology is really important. The fourth thing I would tell you is, as a CISO, and frankly as an engineer, making sure that you're able to track, that you've got the right audit logging, that you've got the right observability of what the agent is doing. It's powerful in 2 ways. One, as a security person, it's really important that you can understand what the agent did. And frankly, as a user, I really appreciate understanding the decision-making process that the agent used. One of the things that we all know is if you understand how somebody reached a decision, you can quickly identify, did they probably get it right? Or Is there something that they missed in their reasoning? Making sure that an agent can provide the same transparency back to the user and back to the security team is really, really important. And then the last thing is, one of the things that we continue to invest in, raising the bar on, is red teaming for AI. We are all learning in this field so quickly. If you're going to be using AI agents in your company, please invest in that capability to continue to stretch those systems and they stay up to date. And it's not just one time. You can't just do it when you release the code. This field is moving fast enough. You need to stay on top of it day after day, week after week, using the latest and greatest in techniques.
Brilliant. Okay, I was actually going to ask you another question about AI agents, but you've answered it in your answer, so we'll skip that one and go on straight to another question about AI. I'll be honest, which is, I wonder if you can tell me how CISOs can prevent AI and automation from taking unintended actions and, benefiting perhaps from overprivileged access. I think you touched on it a little bit in your first point there.
I did, but it's a great, very specific question. There's a couple things to think about. One, where I find agents are really powerful are when they are tool users. And so for an agent, it's both the right combination of the foundational model and the prompts and the ability for the foundational model combined with a set of tools. Sometimes those tools are self-built. Go build me some code. Again, execute that in a sandbox, make sure you understand what it's going to do, and then go execute the code. Other times, it's go use those tools. And so we should use foundational models for what they're really good at. It's more aligned with those creative processes, those reasoning processes that help think through how to solve a problem, and use tools that you understand very well to do the things that need to be correct. And the last thing is, I think we're going to increasingly see cases where agents operate more and more autonomously. But I think we're at the phase right now where agents work to make humans better and faster. And so it's entirely appropriate to have a human in the loop for making critical decisions and based on recommendations from the agent. And in other cases where it's low risk and you should just take a chance, just go take a chance, let the agent go and work. I think a great example of this is, I don't know if you've used the QCLI, the Q command line interface. It is amazing. I was actually sitting down with my son yesterday and said, hey, let's go write a quick program that creates the game Asteroids. I used to play it when I was a kid. And sure enough, you're able to go through it, debug it, but then, did it work right out of the gate? Mostly. Did it need some tweaks, some additional prompts? Yeah, it's that back and forth process. And then when you look at the source code, are there things that I as a security expert would really want to up the game on if it wasn't just for me and my son on my laptop? Oh yeah. And that's the powerful nature of this. It's that iterative process. It's bringing the expertise in at the right time. And it's using the agent to do some really innovative things, because we would never have sat down and written Asteroids in 15 minutes if it hadn't been for some of that power of those agents.
Absolutely. And what a fantastic use for AI. Okay, so pivoting now to the UK, much like governments around the world, the UK government wants to use AI to improve efficiency, quite understandably. And AWS has, hundreds, if not thousands, of public sector clients. I wonder if public sector CISOs should be approaching AI security in a different way to private sector CISOs. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the use of technology in either case is really important, and as a CISO, it's our responsibility to make sure it gets right. When I think of 80% of my job as a CISO falls into two buckets. It's to make sure that what I'm doing is trustworthy and that it's trusted. And I think that's just as true for public sector as it is for industry. And I think it's really important that public sector continues to focus on being both trustworthy and trusted. We all know those cases where where that doesn't happen. And so, if anything, the bars can be a little bit higher because what the public sector provides is so absolutely critical. But those 5 areas of learnings, and in fact, I've worked with a number of public sector CISOs, are really important for us to think through how we move this forward, how we move technology forward. So I don't see a dramatic difference. I just think that it is even more important that what public sector does is both trustworthy and trusted. And frankly, it's something I feel very, I care a lot about for me. And I think those public sector CISOs need to do the same thing.
Okay, brilliant. The government also recently announced a new bill for cybersecurity, the Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill. I wonder, what are your thoughts on that, and on, just generally around the world? More governments around the world are introducing these cyber bills. I'd love to know your thoughts.
I'm not surprised, Tom. I've not had a chance yet to read that specific proposed language in that bill. But I'm seeing a number of governments, including, as you said, the UK, proposing legislation or enacting legislation as they realize that cybersecurity and resilience are really, really important to a nation's security and ability to operate. One of the things that I find remarkable is, in fact, the number of existing laws and regulations that exist, even in the UK, around cybersecurity that affect industry. And so one of the things that I always advise governments is to look very carefully at harmonization of how they manage cybersecurity, and ideally replacement or reciprocity between different cybersecurity regimes, because they'll find that a lot of technology providers provide technology to a lot of different segments. And that's powerful, that's good, that's what you want. That allows everybody to move forward. And having a variety of different types of requirements can lead to confusion. And so I think it's really important to achieve that harmonization, and I think the UK with the proposed legislation probably has a chance to do that in some really substantial ways.
Yeah, a great point. Regulatory harmonization can really save costs for business as well, so it's definitely something that we want to pursue. On the regulation side of things, we've got technology, especially AI, it's changing very, very quickly, every day really. So in that case, should companies wait for regulation to catch up, or should they be setting their own security standards right now?
In cybersecurity, I can't think of a time that I've ever recommended people wait for regulation. Regulation's powerful in that it sets a common bar that everybody needs to achieve, but waiting for regulation's never the right way to approach cybersecurity. And so I would recommend that every company look very carefully at what they need to do in order to manage risk effectively, and then work with government to help ensure that the regulations that come out help them continue to manage risk effectively. And that's that important kind of 1-2 punch. Regulation helps make sure that you're consistent, helps to find a common way to describe it, but technology moves fast enough that waiting for regulation is rarely, if ever, the right answer.
Okay. And now, Chris, because I know you're a very, very busy person, and I'm very grateful that you've taken the time out to talk to me today, but perhaps just one more question for you. I'd love to know how AWS is securing its own AI-driven operations.
Fun question. In fact, those 5 lessons that I gave you came from much of the work that we've done over the years as we've been building our own AI agents, things before even we called them AI agents that came about, and some of the technology that we've continued to evolve and build. Let me give you a quick example of one. Let me think. So Amazon Q has a developer agent for code transformation. And it's a really exciting capability. We used it So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the story of upgrading Java, but when you upgrade major versions of Java, it's often not as simple as, oh, I was using Java 8, I'm just going to start running the same code in Java 17. In fact, there are what's called breaking changes that you actually have to go back and redevelop your software. When you start looking across an institution the size of Amazon, we had over 30,000 applications we had to transition from one to the other. And when you start looking at the amount of developer time, I mean, you're talking, what would typically be 50 developer days on average for those applications. Start talking 50 developer days across 30,000 applications. The developer years invested would be enormous. And so a bunch of smart folks got into a room and said, hey, there's got to be a better way. And so we took, at that time, much more early days generative AI, and of course we've continued to update it as our customers are now using this capability. We started with ourselves, and we built the right set of agents that can go and write the code. Take Java 8 code, Java 11 code, update it to Java 17, and put the recommendations in. And in fact, across the overall process, we got to the point where 79% of the code was accepted by the code reviewer without any changes. And in fact, we continue to evolve this capability, and so it's even better today. And so it's a really good example of how you start prototyping, building something, build it for ourselves, turn it out and use it for customers, test it across a large volume of code. And the lessons that I provided, the authentication, the reviewing the code, the running things in sandbox, those capabilities, the observability and the logging, are things that we continue to develop. And so expect, as we continue to learn, we'll be sharing more of these lessons, because I think it's really important for CISOs everywhere to have the right tools as they're building their code.
That's a brilliant example, so thank you so much for sharing that with me, Chris. And thank you very much for joining me today on Ctrl Alt Lead.
Thank you, Tom. It's great to speak with you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Ctrl Alt Lead. Next time, I'll be talking to Leon Butler, IBM's CEO of the UK and Ireland, about IBM's UK, AI and quantum strategies, as well as what IT leaders need to be preparing for in all of those areas. Until then, you can always visit computing.co.uk for more research, news and analysis. Until next time.